Why was the courtyard so silent? The wind should have carried footsteps. Boots should have scuffed against gravel. Men should have coughed, whispered, shifted their weight. But nothing, not a sound. Every eye was fixed on her. Her step forward had stopped them all. 100 men and women in uniform, waiting for orders, found themselves suspended in a strange quiet, like the air itself feared to move. One step, just one, and it was enough to make the courtyard hold its breath. She didn't look at them, not yet. She kept her eyes on the flag whipping against the morning sky, its edges frayed, its color dulled from months of sun and dust. She stood straight, her jaw set, hands loose at her sides. Inside, her heart hammered. Outside, she gave them nothing. They weren't supposed to notice her. She wasn't their commander. She wasn't their chosen leader. She was just another soldier with scars no one had asked about. But now, they were watching. And she wondered, not for the first time, if stepping forward was a mistake. The orders hadn't come. The mission, already delayed twice, had left them restless. Too many rumors, too many what-ifs. They had seen friends vanish into the hills and not return. Each silence that followed a radio check-in cut deeper than the last. They needed certainty, someone to move. And when she did, it froze them. Not because of who she was, but because of what they thought they knew. She had kept her story hidden, not out of pride, not out of shame, just survival. The courtyard's silence pressed against her chest. The air tasted like iron. She could hear a laugh in her memory. Low, warm, familiar. A brother's laugh. His hand on her shoulder years ago before deployment pulled them in opposite directions. She could almost feel the weight of the photograph tucked deep in her pocket. She never let it leave her uniform. The edges were worn, the faces in it fading. But that wasn't something she'd ever tell them. Not now. A voice cracked the stillness. "Captain's late again." Someone muttered it, low enough to be nearly lost. A ripple ran through the formation. Boots shifted. Someone coughed. Someone else exhaled hard, impatient. The spell threatened to break. And then she turned. Not a dramatic turn, not sharp, just deliberate, enough for her eyes to meet theirs. It wasn't command in her gaze, it wasn't rank, it was something else, steadier, heavier, like a truth no one wanted to say aloud. Some of them looked away. Because they saw it. The thing she carried. "Ma'am," the voice came from her left. A young private couldn't have been older than 20. His voice cracked halfway through the word. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. What happens if the intel's wrong again?" There it was. The question no one wanted to ask. It hung in the air like smoke, bitter, unshakable. Her throat tightened. She wanted to answer. She wanted to lie maybe or soften the edge, but lies had cost them too much already. So she said nothing. Not yet. She turned back toward the flag, watching it strain against the morning wind. Her jaw ached from holding still. She remembered the last briefing. The map spread across the table, the commander's voice steady but rushed. The promise that the compound was lightly defended, that rescue would be simple. It hadn't been. The bodies they carried back proved that much. And the one body they couldn't recover, her brother's, proved even more. No one here knew. None of them. They thought he had gone missing with another unit. They thought it was just another name on the long list of unanswered questions. But she knew. She had seen the footage. Blurred, shaky, intercepted from enemy broadcasts. His face, bruised but alive. And then the cut to black. That was why she was here. Not for the mission. Not for the flag, for him. But she couldn't say that, not yet. The young private's question lingered unanswered. Others shifted uneasily. Some frowned. Some whispered, but no one pressed her. Because deep down, they already knew. When the orders finally came, they weren't shouted. A runner emerged from the command post, his breath clouding in the cool air, a folder tucked under his arm. He handed it off, quick, eyes darting like he wanted no part in it. The squad leader snapped open the pages. "Read, Reread, faces hardening. She didn't have to see the paper. She already knew what it said. And still her chest tightened when she heard the words spoken aloud. Tonight, move at 2300. Target confirmed. The ripple through the courtyard wasn't relief. It was something else, like a collective flinch. The private swallowed audibly. Someone muttered a curse. Someone else closed their eyes for too long. She didn't move. But inside she was burning. Because this was it, the same compound, the same hills, the same silence that had swallowed her brother whole. And now it was her turn to walk into it. Her hand brushed against her pocket, fingers pressing against the thin fabric where the photograph lay hidden. She thought about pulling it out, showing them, explaining, letting them know why her step forward had frozen them in the first place. But no, not yet. Instead, she exhaled slow, steady. And for the first time in hours, she spoke. "We move." Just 2 words. But the silence returned. This time it wasn't uncertainty that held them. It was something sharper, something that cut down to bone. Resolve. Because sometimes, just sometimes, it wasn't the rank that gave permission to act. It was the weight behind a voice. And hers carried something none of them could name. The private nodded almost too fast. Someone else adjusted their rifle strap with shaky hands. Another soldier muttered under his breath, finally. They were moving. But she knew the real movement wasn't in their bodies. It was in their hearts, in their silence. And in the question she hadn't answered. What if the intel was wrong again? She didn't know. Not yet. But she carried the photograph deeper into her pocket. And as the courtyard broke into motion, she promised herself something she dared not say aloud. This time, whether the intel was wrong or right, she would find out what happened to him. And she would not come back empty-handed. What if silence itself was the enemy? Hours later, inside the briefing room, silence weighed heavier than the walls. The air was stale, thick with coffee gone cold, sweat sunk deep into uniforms and nerves unspoken. Maps covered the table, creases sharp, ink smudged at the corners from too many hands. She sat at the far end, not at the head where command belonged. She didn't need the seat. Eyes flicked toward her anyway, some quick, some longer, some with something close to resentment. She ignored it. The operation was simple on paper. A convoy, night movement, small team infiltration, satellite images circled in red, a walled compound in the hills, guard rotations noted, guesses more than guarantees. The kind of mission that sounded easier the more you didn't think about it. But she thought about it. Every detail, every shadow, every silence between the lines. Her hands rested on the table, fingers locked together, but beneath her skin they trembled. She pressed harder, digging nails into her palm. Control. Always control. The commander spoke, voice even, measured, as if he believed what he was saying, as if the words themselves could shield them. Extraction point here, 2 clicks south. Expect resistance light scattered. Intel suggests morale is low. Morale is low. She almost laughed. Morale was always low until the ambush began, until the night cracked open with fire, until morale meant nothing. A soldier across from her, Corporal Diaz, shifted in his seat, rubbing at the scar on his forearm. He had a story, one no one asked about but everyone knew pieces of. The convoy hit 3 months ago. Burned vehicles, friends gone in smoke. He hadn't spoken much since. Now his eyes locked on the map, and she knew he wasn't seeing paper. He was seeing fire. Her gaze softened briefly. They were all carrying ghosts. And still, no one said it aloud. The commander folded the map. Questions. The room stayed silent. Not because there weren't any, because no one trusted the answers. And then too soon it was over. Chairs scraped, boots scuffed, orders turned into motion. She stayed seated until most had gone. Only Diaz lingered. He adjusted his strap, tightened the buckle twice, then glanced at her. His voice was low, gravelly, like it hadn't been used in weeks. "You believe it?" Her chest tightened. She didn't ask what he meant. He wasn't asking about maps or intel. He was asking if she believed survival was possible. She looked at him, really looked. His eyes were raw, tired, waiting for something. Her mouth went dry. She wanted to tell him no. She wanted to tell him that belief was a luxury she hadn't had in a long time, but she couldn't give him that. So she just said, "I believe in us moving forward. That's all that matters." He nodded, slow, not convinced, but not broken either. And then he left. She sat alone, her hand drifting again to the pocket where the photograph lived. She didn't pull it out, just pressed her palm against it. The edges dug into her skin, a reminder, a wound. When the night came, the convoy rolled out under a sky without stars. Dust rose in pale clouds, headlights dimmed to slits. Engines hummed low, a sound too steady to be safe. She sat in the back of the lead vehicle, rifle against her chest, helmet pressing into her forehead. Her breathing synced with the hum, in, out, steady, until it was. A flash in her mind, her brother's last message, his voice through static. "We'll finish this fast. I'll be home before you know it." He hadn't come home. She clenched her jaw, forcing the memory back into its box. Focus, always focus. The convoy moved deeper into the hills. The terrain grew jagged, shadows stretching long and sharp, like the earth itself wanted to cut them open. She kept scanning, eyes shifting left to right, searching the dark. But what she feared most wasn't in sight. It was the silence. Too smooth, too easy, no dogs barking in the distance, no shepherd's fires on the ridges, just absence. She knew that kind of silence. It meant they were being watched. She leaned forward, voice low to the driver, "Cut speed." He glanced at her, hesitated, then obeyed. The hum lowered, wheels grinding slower over dirt. The other vehicles followed. Someone in the back muttered, "What the hell's she doing?" She didn't answer. She just listened. And then faint, almost missed, a click too metallic, too sharp to belong in nature. Her stomach dropped. "Brake now." The convoy screeched to a halt. "Out," she snapped, already throwing open the door, boots hitting ground hard. She dove behind a rock formation, rifle raised. The first blast came a second later. Not massive, controlled. A mine placed smart, just ahead of where the lead wheels would have rolled. Dirt exploded upward, flames licking briefly before smoke claimed the space. Shouts, curses, soldiers spilling out, scrambling for cover. But no second blast. Not yet. Her pulse thundered in her throat. She scanned the ridges, every shadow now a threat, every stone a possible muzzle. Nothing. "Ambush," someone hissed. "Not yet," she muttered. Because this wasn't a strike, this was a message. Someone wanted them nervous. Someone wanted them to know they were being guided, herded. Her grip tightened on the rifle. This was the same path, the same hills. She felt the photograph burn in her pocket. And in the smoke curling over the destroyed dirt, she could almost see her brother's face. The commander barked orders, steady but clipped. "Form perimeter, check for secondaries." Boots crunched gravel, flashlights flicked briefly, then killed. The night swallowed everything again. Her chest heaved, sweat sliding down her spine beneath the vest. She thought of Diaz, his scar, his silence. She thought of the young private, asking what happens if the intel's wrong again. And she thought of her brother. What she hadn't told them. Not yet. The convoy wouldn't move forward tonight. The commander called it, set camp in the rocks, wait till dawn, reassess. Too much risk, too many unknowns. But she knew. There would never be less risk, never fewer unknowns. The silence wouldn't let them leave. She lay awake against stone, eyes wide open, rifle across her chest. Others tried to sleep. Diaz shifted restlessly, whispering something under his breath, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse. The private curled on his side, thumb brushing the edge of a worn dog tag. They were human, all of them, fragile in ways uniforms tried to hide. And she was breaking too. Because the hills around them weren't just foreign, they were personal. She could feel him here. Somewhere in this silence, her brother was waiting. Alive or dead, she didn't know. But she would find out. She closed her eyes just for a moment and made a silent promise. Tomorrow she would step forward again, even if the silence swallowed her whole. What did dawn really reveal? For most it was light, clarity, the easing of shadows. But here in these hills dawn was cruel. It stripped the night of its secrets, exposed every silhouette, every rifle barrel, every trembling hand. She rose before the first glow reached the horizon. The air was cold, biting through her gloves. Breath came out in pale clouds. Around her, soldiers shifted under tarps, some pretending to sleep, others staring blankly, waiting for orders they didn't trust. Diaz sat hunched, rubbing his scar again. The young private's lips moved silently, repeating words only he could hear. A prayer, maybe, or a memory. And she pressed her hand against her pocket. The photograph, always the photograph. When the commander gave the word, it wasn't loud, just clipped. Break camp, move quiet. They did. Boots packed dirt, rifles slung tight. The convoy had been left behind, too loud, too obvious. Now it was on foot. The hills rose steep, jagged stone cutting into their palms as they climbed. The silence pressed harder here. Every crunch of gravel sounded like betrayal. She walked near the front, eyes scanning ridges. Shadows stretched long, shifting as the sun crawled higher. Her pulse matched her steps, steady, but her mind drifted unsteady. To him, her brother. She remembered the way he used to move through the world, shoulders loose, grin crooked, always humming some tune under his breath. Even in deployment, he carried lightness. He made silence bearable. And then one day, he was gone. She swallowed hard, forcing focus back to the ridge line. Because silence out here wasn't empty, it was full, waiting. "Ma'am," Diaz murmured, his voice a gravel scratch. He gestured with a tilt of his chin. She followed his eyes. Ahead where the path curved around a bluff, a glint, brief, almost invisible, but not to them. A scope. Her heart lurched. "Cover," she hissed. They scattered, dropping low behind stone. Dust puffed where knees and elbows hit. Rifles lifted, scanning. Nothing. No shot. The silence thickened, suffocating. The commander signaled 2 scouts forward, slow, crawling. They disappeared around the bluff. Time stretched. Every second felt sharpened, cutting. Then a single hand signal, all clear. They moved again. But she knew what she had seen. Someone was watching. Someone had chosen not to fire. Why? The question gnawed at her as they pressed forward, each step heavier, each glance at the ridges sharper. By midday the sun was merciless. Heat pressed down, sweat-soaking uniforms, lips cracked dry. They paused in the shadow of a jagged outcrop, packs dropped, canteens unscrewed. The brief moment of rest carried a dangerous softness. Shoulders sagged, eyes half closed. The young private sat near her, fingers worrying at his dog tag. He didn't look up when he spoke. "You ever think about what happens if we don't come back?" Her throat tightened. The boy's voice was too soft for war, too alive with questions. She could have told him the truth, that she thought about it every step, that sometimes not coming back felt easier than carrying the silence home. But she just asked, "What about you?" He hesitated, then whispered, "My mom, she still thinks I'm in training. I couldn't tell her. I didn't want her scared every day." His shoulders shook as he laughed once hollow. "Guess she'd be more scared if she knew where I really am." She looked at him, at the boy's cracked lips, his raw honesty, and she felt the photograph burn in her pocket again. Because she hadn't told her parents either, not about what she knew, not about what she carried. She almost spoke, almost told him about her brother, but the words stuck, heavy and sharp, lodged behind her teeth. Not yet. Before silence could stretch too far, Diaz cut in. Don't think about home. Thinking about home gets you killed. The boy frowned, but he shut up. And the weight returned. When they moved again, it was slower. The hills narrowed, walls closing tight around them, the kind of terrain that begged for ambush. Rifles lifted higher, eyes sharper. Her chest thudded with each step. The photograph seemed heavier now, dragging her down. And then it happened. The crack of a rifle. Sharp, violent, echoing. Dust burst near the lead scout's boot. He dove, rolling behind Stone. Another shot. Shouts. Rifles answering, spitting fire into the ridges. The air exploded into chaos. Bullets pinged off rocks, snapped overhead. Dust clouds bloomed, choking lungs. Shouts turned to screams. She pressed flat against Stone, heart hammering, ears ringing. Then she saw him. High on the ridge, just a glimpse. A figure with a scope, too steady, too deliberate, not panicked like the others. Her breath caught. Because the way he moved, the tilt of the shoulder, the set of the stance, it was familiar. Too familiar. Her hands shook around the rifle. No, it couldn't be. But her gut screamed otherwise. She froze, vision tunneling. Bullets still tore the air, shouts still filled the canyon, but she only saw him. Her brother. Alive. Maybe. Her finger twitched on the trigger. She couldn't fire, not at him, not without knowing. Her chest heaved, panic clawing. She wanted to shout, to break the silence, but her voice stuck. And then he vanished, pulled back behind Stone. Gone. Her heart collapsed in on itself. Had it been real, or just another ghost the hills were throwing at her? She didn't know. Not yet. But the mission demanded movement. She forced herself forward, barking to the nearest soldiers, suppressing fire, push left flank. Her voice cut through chaos. Orders snapped, boots pounded, rifles roared. They moved, they fought, and slowly the fire from the ridge thinned. Shouts turned to silence. The enemy melted into hills. The canyon stank of gunpowder and sweat. The ringing in her ears wouldn't fade. Bodies were checked, 2 wounded, none dead, a victory on paper. But she didn't feel victory. She felt hollow. Because in that smoke and dust, she thought she'd seen him. And if she was right, then the silence wasn't just the enemy. It was hiding the truth. She pressed her hand against her pocket, knuckles white. The photograph cut into her skin. And she made another promise. Next time she saw him, if it was him, she would not look away. How do you lead when your truth is a lie? The canyon was quiet again, but not peaceful. Quiet in the way a wound seals over blood. The squad moved cautiously, dragging the wounded back under shade, rifles still raised, every eye twitching at ridges above. Dust clung to skin, sweat stung eyes, the air smelled of gunpowder and fear. She crouched low, watching Diaz tie a tourniquet on the corporal's leg, his hands steady, his jaw locked. The young private hovered, face pale, trying to be useful, passing gauze, biting his lip until it bled. The commander stood apart, scanning the ridge with binoculars, muttering curses under his breath. And she pressed her forehead to her rifle, heart still battering her chest. The image replayed again and again. The sniper on the ridge, the stance, the movement, too familiar. Was it him? Her brother? Or was it just her mind, desperate, seeing ghosts in smoke? She couldn't know, not yet. But the possibility gnawed at her, tore at her. If he was alive, why was he there? Why wasn't he in chains or behind bars? Why a rifle in his hands, aiming down at them? Unless... Her stomach twisted. No, she shut that thought down before it could take shape. The commander's voice snapped her back. We move, now. No time to sit here and wait for another hit. Boots scuffed, packs lifted, wounded strapped and carried. The squad moved again, slower, tighter, shoulders brushing stone as they pressed through the narrowing canyon. Every shadow was a threat. Every silence stretched like a wire pulled too thin. Her eyes kept searching ridges, desperate for another glimpse, but nothing, just absence. And absence was worse. By dusk, exhaustion weighed heavy. The squad collapsed into a hollow beneath an overhang. Canteens were passed, rations chewed dry, silence swallowing them all. She sat apart, staring at the horizon bleeding orange into dark. Her hand drifted again to her pocket. The photograph. Her only proof he had once existed outside her mind. Diaz lowered himself next to her. His scar caught the last of the light. He chewed a piece of stale bread, then spoke without looking at her. "You froze." Her chest tightened. "When?" "In the canyon for a second. You saw something, didn't you?" Her breath hitched. She stared at the stone floor, at the dust smeared across her boots. She could lie. She could brush it off. Say she was scanning. Say she was waiting for the right angle. But Diaz's eyes were on her now, steady, unblinking. He wasn't asking as a soldier. He was asking as someone who knew what ghosts looked like. She exhaled shaky. "I thought I saw him." "Who?" Her throat burned. The words scraped coming out. "My brother." Diaz's jaw worked. He didn't laugh, didn't scoff, didn't accuse, just said, "The one who never came back." She nodded once, barely. "And?" Her voice cracked. "I don't know." They sat in silence. The squad murmured behind them, boots shifting, canteens clinking. The night pressed closer, stars beginning to burn overhead. Finally Diaz said, "If it was him, what does that mean?" Her chest hollowed. The question she hadn't let herself ask, the one clawing at her ribs. If it was him, was he captive, forced, or had he crossed? The silence between them was answer enough. Diaz swallowed hard. "Don't tell them, not yet." She met his eyes, startled. He shrugged. "They'll lose focus, think you're chasing ghosts, and maybe you are." The words stung, because maybe he was right. She clenched the photograph in her pocket until the edges cut deep. That night sleep didn't come. Every sound pulled her eyes open. Every shift in shadow had her reaching for her rifle, and every time her lids closed she saw the ridge again, the stance, the scope. Her brother. Alive. Or not. By dawn they were moving again. The hills grew steeper, sharper. The path wound like a knife's edge, loose gravel sliding under boots. The squad moved in single file, breath short, eyes scanning constantly. The young private stumbled once, nearly sliding down the slope. She caught his arm, pulling him steady. His wide eyes met hers, and for a moment he looked like a child. "Thanks," he whispered. She nodded, no words. Her throat was too tight. Because saving him had felt like saving her brother. And losing him would feel the same too. By midday the heat was brutal again. Lips cracked, canteens light. The squad collapsed in the shade of a cliff face. The commander checked his map, muttering. Diaz wiped sweat from his forehead, silent as always. The private stared at his dog tag like it could give him courage. And she pressed her back against stone, staring up at the sky. Blue, endless, merciless. Then faint. Voices. Not theirs. Her pulse spiked. She raised a hand. The squad froze. Silence swallowed them. The voices grew clearer. Foreign tongue, sharp clipped, 2 men, maybe 3, close. The commander signaled, "Stay low, wait." Footsteps crunched, a shadow passed, another. And then the voices stopped. The silence pressed, suffocating. Her finger tightened on her trigger. And then, sudden, boots scuffed stone behind them. An enemy soldier rounded the corner, rifle raised, eyes wide in shock. Time snapped. She fired first. The crack echoed. His body crumpled, dust rising. Shouts erupted. More boots, more rifles. The squad scrambled, rifles spitting. Bullets pinged stone, sparks flashing. The canyon lit with fire. She dropped behind cover, breath ragged, pulse thunderous. Dias fired steady bursts. The private's hands shook, shots wild. The commander barked orders, voice raw. And then in the chaos, she saw him again. On the ridge above, scope glinting, rifle steady. Her chest collapsed inward. It was him. Had to be him. Her mouth opened, desperate to shout, to stop them, to stop him. But before she could, his rifle cracked. Not at them. At the enemy below. The soldier dropped, throat blooming red. Her breath caught. He was helping them. Her brother. Alive. And firing on their side. The world spun. Her rifle trembled in her hands. She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. And then he was gone again, pulled back into shadow. The firefight ended as suddenly as it began. The enemy fled, silence slamming down. The squad panted, sweat pouring, eyes wide. The commander spat into the dirt. They're testing us, seeing how far we'll push. No one argued. But she knew better. Someone else was testing her. Her brother. Still alive, still watching, still silent. And she didn't know. Was he saving her? Or warning her? Why did she hesitate just for a fraction of a second before giving the signal? No one noticed it, no one but her. That stutter in her hand, that micro-pause in her breathing, like the weight of 1,000 decisions pressed down on her chest. She steadied it quickly, covered it with a crisp nod, but inside she knew. Every mission had its ghost. Tonight she carried two. The city below was alive with shadows. Not the natural kind, but the manufactured layers of fear that came when a neighborhood lived under the unspoken rule of silence. Windows shuttered early. Dogs didn't bark. Children didn't laugh. Streets that should have hummed with life felt hollow, like a stage abandoned mid-play. Her earpiece crackled once, then fell quiet. She checked her team's positions by instinct more than sight. A sniper watching from a half-collapsed bell tower. Two ground units blending into alleys, boots muffled by dust. And her, crouched on a rooftop with a rifle resting against her shoulder. Every part of her body said she should feel calm. Training did that, repeated motions until instinct became steel. But tonight wasn't about steel. Tonight was about something softer, something the manuals never prepared her for, memory. Because just a few blocks from here, in another life, she'd walked the same streets holding her brother's hand. He was 12 then, pretending to be fearless, hiding fear in sarcasm. That was before the convoy hit the roadside bomb, before she'd learned that not all goodbyes announce themselves. The target hadn't emerged yet. Intel said he moved like smoke, never in the same place twice. He was a whisper, but whispers, if left unchecked, turned into shouts that could topple cities. Her job wasn't just to stop a man. It was to cut off the echo before it reached her own soil. Her finger hovered near the trigger. Not on it, never too soon. Timing was everything. A second too early and the shot would warn him. A second too late and the street would flood with armed men. Balance. She hated balance. In the pause, she let her eyes wander. A curtain fluttered. A shadow recoiled. Somewhere, a mother pressed her child's face into her chest, praying not to be noticed by either side. This was the part the reports never wrote down. This was the silence between the statistics. Her radio hummed again, low and urgent. Movement, northwest corner, confirm. She raised the scope, adjusted slowly, heart ticking like a metronome. There, a figure slipping along the edge of the street, coat too heavy for the weather, pace too measured for a man without fear. It matched, but there was something else, something that snagged at her gut. The figure paused beneath a lantern. For half a breath, the light caught his face. Young, too young, could it be him, or just another decoy? Her throat tightened. This was the hesitation no one ever trained her for. The rules of engagement were clear, but the rules of conscience were not. and as she exhaled, steady, measured, the ghost of her brother's voice whispered in her ear, "Don't miss." She tightened her grip. But before she acted, another sound fractured the night: footsteps. Not his. Someone else entered the street, rushing, calling a name too soft for her mic to catch. A child, no more than 10, darting toward the target like a moth drawn to fire. Every nerve in her body screamed at once. Mission clarity shattered. What had been a clean, surgical strike became chaos in an instant, and chaos had no playbook. She froze, breath caught between duty and humanity. The courtyard below seemed to hold its breath too, as if even the walls waited to see what choice she would make. And in that held silence, one truth pressed into her chest so deeply it almost broke her. Sometimes the hardest part of war wasn't the trigger you pulled. It was the one you didn't. Her finger trembled, the world waited. But there was something she hadn't told her team. Not yet. Something that would change how they saw this mission and her. Something that had been buried since the day she signed her name to the oath. And now, as the child's voice echoed in the dead street, that secret clawed its way back to the surface. She whispered into her mic, voice barely steady, "Hold, no shots, not yet." The silence that followed was heavier than gunfire. Because what came next would not only decide the mission, it would decide who she was and what she was willing to lose again. What if the secret she carried wasn't about the mission at all, but about herself? That thought gnawed at her even as she scanned the street, rifle steady, breath measured. The child was still there, too close, too fast, too innocent. And her target, the man with the heavy coat and careful stride, hadn't flinched. He didn't turn, didn't run. He just waited, almost like he knew she wouldn't fire. She whispered again, barely audible, "Hold position." Static filled her ear, a voice sharp, frustrated, "You have the shot, take it." She closed her eyes for half a second. In that half second, her past bled through. A barracks at night years ago, a letter tucked into her pillow, her brother's handwriting, angry, scared, resigned. "If you're going to fight their wars, fight for something real. Don't disappear like Dad did." She hadn't shown anyone that letter. Not her commanding officer, not her mother, not even the counselor who once asked why she pushed herself harder than everyone else. She buried it, sealed it, carried it. And now, in this still, fragile moment, it screamed inside her. The child stopped short. The man bent slightly, whispered something to the boy, too fast for her to read his lips, too far to know what promise passed between them. But she knew the look, protective, fierce. The kind of look her brother had given her the last time she saw him, seconds before the blast erased him from the world. Her chest tightened. She had seen men use children as shields, pawns, tools. But she had also seen fathers clutch sons, mothers hide daughters, families stitched together in fragile threads even as war tried to tear them apart. Which was this? Her team didn't see nuance. They saw orders, targets, outcomes. She saw ghosts. Her finger twitched again, not from nerves but from the sheer weight of decision. If she fired, the boy's scream would haunt her forever. If she held back, her team would question her resolve, maybe even her loyalty. "Confirm status," her earpiece demanded. Her lips pressed to the mic. "Negative, stand down. Repeat, stand down." Silence, a dangerous silence. She imagined them in their positions, the sniper shifting uncomfortably, the ground units exchanging glances, doubt pooling in their chests. She could almost hear their thoughts. "She's compromised. She's not objective. She's risking us all." But she also knew something they didn't, something she hadn't told them yet. The man in the coat, he wasn't just another target. Months ago, buried in an intel report no one else read carefully, she'd found a name. A surname that matched a fragment of her brother's last known contacts overseas. A name he had once written in that letter. It wasn't proof. It wasn't enough to say this man was tied to her brother's death or his survival. But it was enough to plant a seed in her chest. A seed she couldn't rip out. So she held. The child clutched the man's hand now. The boy looked terrified, but not of him, of the street, of the silence, of the unseen eyes he seemed to sense were on him. Her scope blurred as her own eyes burned. She blinked hard, cursed under her breath, forced her focus back. "Status," the voice demanded again, louder this time, impatient. She steadied her breath. Civilian interference, no clear shot, adjusting. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Her radio cut out, replaced by raw silence. The kind that meant her team wasn't convinced. The kind that meant this mission had just shifted under her feet. Down below, the man placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, guiding him toward the darkness of the alley. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. Not the move of someone running. Not the move of someone afraid. Her jaw clenched. Every instinct said fire. Every memory said don't. The courtyard around her felt frozen. The whole city holding its breath, waiting for the choice she alone could make. And in that breath, she realized something with bone-deep clarity. This mission wasn't just about a man. It was about the secret she'd been dragging behind her like chains. And sooner or later, she would have to tell them. But not tonight, not yet. Instead, she whispered again, softer this time, to herself more than to the radio. "Not like this. Not tonight." The words vanished into the night, leaving only the silence of a woman who had chosen restraint over action, knowing restraint, too, carried a cost. And somewhere in the shadows, the man and the boy disappeared. She lowered her rifle, slowly, heavily. The night wasn't over, the mission wasn't done. But neither was her secret. It was only now beginning to unravel. "Do you want me to take part 7 even deeper?" With her team starting to doubt her, pressure building, and the truth about her secret pulling closer to the surface, while keeping the suspense alive until the very end. What happens when trust begins to crack, not from the enemy, but from within your own team? That was the question hanging in the night as she pulled back from the rifle's scope, her breath finally breaking in short, quiet bursts. The silence in her earpiece wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy, judging, waiting for her to explain why she had just let the target slip into darkness. She could almost hear them whispering behind the static, words like compromised, words like unfit. "Command will want an answer," one voice finally broke through. Not harsh, not loud, but pointed. It was her sniper, a man who had followed her through 3 missions without hesitation. Tonight, hesitation had found him instead. She pressed her lips together before replying, "Not over comms." Another silence, then a clipped response, "Copy." But copy didn't mean agree. Copy didn't mean trust. She sank back into the rooftop's edge, rifle across her knees, eyes still searching the streets below. The boy and the man were gone, swallowed by the alleys. She could pretend she'd lost them. She could write it in her report. Target moved too quickly, civilians compromised, shot, extraction required. Paper was easy. Paper never asked about conscience. Her team would. A breeze tugged at her sleeve. The night smelled of smoke and dust, of bread left burning in abandoned ovens, of fear that seeped into stone. She let it fill her lungs, sharp and bitter, as if punishing herself for not pulling the trigger. Her brother's voice came again. Not the boy he had been, but the young man in that last memory. "If you fight, fight for something real." Was this real? Was protecting a child real? Or was she fooling herself, letting her past blur her aim? She swallowed hard. Her radio hissed and the ground team spoke. A younger voice, nervous. "Ma'am, with respect, we had him." She closed her eyes. She could hear the edge in his tone, frustration, confusion, maybe even betrayal. He didn't see the boy. He didn't see the weight in the man's posture, the softness in that fleeting touch on the child's shoulder. He saw only mission. And wasn't that what she used to be? Mission first. Mission always, until the letter, until the silence of a folded flag. She opened her eyes, scanning again, forcing herself back into the present. The alleys were still, too still, which meant the man hadn't vanished. He was watching, waiting, baiting. She knew the tactic. Use uncertainty as a weapon. Let hesitation rot the team from the inside. Her hand tightened around the radio. She could lie to them, or she could finally speak the truth she'd carried like shrapnel inside her chest. But truth came with cost, and once spoken, it could never be unsaid. A flicker of movement below, she froze. A figure, not the man, not the boy. Another, tall, armed, scanning rooftops. Reinforcements. The trap was springing and they were still out of position. She leaned into the mic, voice clipped but calm. Eyes up, we're not done here, stay sharp. Copy, but this time the copy was colder. Her mind raced. She needed to act, to keep control, to prove she hadn't lost herself. But the secret kept burning at the back of her throat, begging to be spoken. She remembered the letter again. The last line her brother had written, smudged in ink like he'd pressed too hard. If you find him, don't trust him. Her breath caught, because she'd never told anyone about that line. Never admitted that she wasn't sure who him was. Never confessed that every time she pulled a trigger on missions like this, she wondered if it was the man her brother had meant. And tonight, when the boy had clutched that man's hand, something inside her whispered the unthinkable. What if her brother hadn't died at all? What if he'd chosen another path? She shook her head hard, forcing the thought back into the dark where it belonged. She couldn't afford that now. The figure below adjusted his weapon, calling softly in a language she half understood. She knew the words: orders, search, secure, kill. The mission wasn't slipping anymore. It was crumbling. She raised her rifle again, scope fixed, heart pounding with the cold edge of necessity. The man below wasn't a father, wasn't a brother, wasn't a ghost. He was a threat, clear and immediate. And this time, hesitation would kill more than trust. Her fingers settled against the trigger. The courtyard seemed to inhale with her. And still the secret pulsed, louder than her heartbeat, louder than the comms, louder than war itself. She wasn't sure if she was hunting an enemy or a shadow tied to the only family she had left. Her scope steadied, the world narrowed. And just before she fired, a voice, not on the radio, not in memory, but on the street below, called her name. Her name. Not her code name, not her rank, her name. Her breath snapped in half. The rifle wavered. And suddenly, the mission wasn't the only thing in danger of collapsing. Who was it that spoke her name? The words still echoed in her chest, fragile and trembling as if the night itself had called her out. She pressed her cheek harder against the rifle stock, scope quivering, heart pounding with a rhythm she couldn't control. The street below was empty again, or at least it looked empty. But the sound hadn't been imagined. It couldn't have been. Her team was silent in her ear. They hadn't heard it. If they had, they'd be demanding answers already. Her name, her real name, not the call sign she wore like armor, not the clipped syllables that belonged to the soldier, but the one her mother whispered when she was a child, the one her brother teased her with, sharp and soft all at once. The street shifted. A shadow detached from the alley, the man, the coat, the boy still clinging to his hand. He raised his head, and though the distance was too great for her scope to give perfect clarity, she saw enough. Eyes, familiar eyes. Not the same as her brother, older, wounded, but carrying the same burn of someone who had lost too much and refused to forget. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to call out, to demand answers, to fire, to weep, to do anything but sit there, trapped between the person she had been and the soldier she was now. The radio cracked suddenly. "Sniper, do you have the shot? Ground team moving in." Her pulse spiked. If they moved now, the boy would be caught in crossfire. If she fired now, she might silence a man who held the only truth she'd been searching for since the day her brother was taken from her. Her finger curled on the trigger. Her throat tightened. And then the boy looked up, just a flicker. But in that flicker she saw the thing that split her world in half, his face. Those same sharp lines, that same stubborn set to the jaw, her brother's features not in the man but in the child. The rifle trembled, the world roared. It couldn't be, impossible and yet undeniable. The boy wasn't just a civilian, he was blood, her brother's son. Which meant the man wasn't just a target, he was kin by proxy, a protector. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Her team didn't know. They couldn't know. And if she hesitated any longer, if she told them now, it would be too late. Orders would override her. Command would bury the truth beneath reports and redactions. She inhaled once sharp. "Abort mission," she whispered. Static confusion, anger, voices overlapping, demanding clarity. Negative, confirm shot, confirm target, confirm. She shut the channel down. Silence, just her breath in the night. The man below pulled the boy closer, guiding him deeper into the shadows. She lowered her rifle slowly, painfully, each inch like tearing skin from bone. Her chest burned, her eyes blurred. She had a choice, the kind no manual prepared her for. End the mission and live with their suspicion, or finish it and live with her own damnation. For the first time in years, she chose herself. Her rifle rested against the rooftop tiles. She rose to her knees, body trembling not with fear but with the sheer, unbearable weight of relief. She wasn't going to kill this man. She wasn't going to kill the last thread tying her to her brother. Below, the man glanced up, not at her but through her, like he already knew the decision she'd made. His lips moved once, a word she couldn't hear, a word she didn't need to. Then he disappeared into the dark, boy in tow. Her radio flared again, voices sharp, accusing. "Mission compromised. Explain. Explain now." But she said nothing. She sat on the rooftop, hands pressed to the tiles, head bowed. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel the weight of it all, the silence, the grief, the hope, the betrayal, the fragile, stubborn ember of family still burning in the rubble of her war. She knew what would come next. Investigations, suspicion, perhaps even punishment, but none of it mattered, because in that fleeting moment she had chosen blood over orders, humanity over mission, herself over the mask. And as the night closed in around her, she whispered the only truth she had left. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. Her words vanished into the dark. No reply, no applause, no understanding, just silence. But silence was enough, because silence meant she was still alive. And so was he. And in that fragile, impossible fact, she finally found what she had been searching for all along. Not victory, not redemption, but the chance to believe that her brother's story wasn't finished. The rooftop held her still. The night carried her secret away. And when dawn finally came, it rose over a soldier who had chosen to be human, no matter the cost.